Hello students, I'm Himani Sharma, your UGC NET educator. In this new YouTube video, which we are bringing on the Drishti platform about the concept series, specifically for paper 1, right? So we are going to talk about two important things when we talk about research, without which the research won't be feasible. The research won't ever take place, because eventually we want to measure the effect of something on the other thing, right? So of course, what are we talking about here? We are talking about independent and dependent variables. When we talk about research, we need these variables there because we want to see if one thing is affecting the other, and if we make changes in one thing, how is it affecting the outcome, the result altogether, right? So in research, we talk about those very things. First of all, we will be, of course, dealing with independent, dependent variables, but we all should be knowing that what are variables per se? Why do we need them in research, and for what kind of effect? So variables are any characteristics that can take on values. So anything which has value, be it your height, right? So if your height is, let's just say, 5 feet, 4 inches, of course it is measurable and it is some kind of, value which is there. Same is the case with your age, same is the case with the age of the people that you are dealing with in your research, right? The temperature of a particular room, right? Or test scores, so on and so forth. So in research, we try to see the effect of these kinds of variables on other things, correct? Now, researchers often manipulate or measure independent and dependent variable in studies to test or see the cause and effect relationship. Since the beginning of the video only, in the first few minutes, I only told you that we want to see the effect of something on the other thing. This is why these variables are particularly used in research. So, researchers manipulate or measure. Now, when I use this word manipulation in the context of research, right, it does not mean about, anything negative. The manipulation here that I'm telling you all is about the changes that are taking place basically, right? If I increase, decrease something, if I'm changing something, right? And it can be something which is getting modified, right? So if, for example, if I am increasing the amount of oil that I put in my hair, right, for the hair strengthening purposes, but if I use no oil as compared to using more, or oil on a regular basis, I will see a significant difference in my hair porosity, etc., right? So of course, these are nothing to do with which are negative changes. Of course, they can be negative, they can be positive, depending on the type of research that the researcher is conducting, right? And they are used to measure how beautifully, right? Like we all are talking about how and to what extent our independent variable is manipulating the dependent variable. So what is the cause of something? And if that's the cause, what is the effect that we are talking about here, right? So basically, that is why we need variables in our research to see or establish this cause and effect relationship, which always and always, or most of the times, if I say, that thing occurs, correct? So first of all, we are going to talk about independent variables. Independent variables, you all are supposed to memorize by this very thing, that independent variable will always be the cause, and dependent variable, on the other hand, will always and always be the effect, right? So it means that whatever changes I am making here in the independent variable, that will have a direct impact on the dependent variable. If I am having Complan to increase my height, of course, if I won't have Complan, or if I am having only, let's just say, 1 tablespoon Complan, right, to increase my height. So what am I measuring here? The effect of Complan on my height, right? So of course, how much Complan and how I am drinking it, right? Am I drinking it in the sufficient amount, right? That will always and always will be the one which will be affecting my height. So now you understand the differentiation between the two, right? We'll always see the independent as the cause and the dependent as the effect. Its value is independent of other variables in your study. But dependent variable on the other hand depends on the changes which are occurring, the manipulation which is occurring in the independent variable, correct? The dependent variable is dependent on the independent variable. Why? Because if you will change something, for example, as I gave you, if you will change the amount of Complan, right, in your day, having it in your day as the doctor must have suggested, you will see a significant change in your height. But if you are just drinking it for one time, or let's just say in a small amount, you will see no significant change. So the effect, that is the height, is dependent on how you are drinking Complan. As the experimenter changes the independent variable, like we told you that we are going to see the changes of Complan, right? The effect on the dependent variable is observed and recorded in the research part, right? Then we have independent variables, which are also known as explanatory variables, because they are explaining that why the outcome is there, right? Why, if I change my diet, how is it affecting my skin, right? That is why they are explaining. Predictor, because they predict the value of a dependent variable. The more changes I make in the independent variable, the visible effect I will see in the dependent variable. And they are known as the right hand side variables because they appear on the right hand side of a regression equation. Now, when you do statistics, these equations, right, when we are measuring these very things, these variables appear on the right side. On the other hand, the dependent variables, they are also known as response variables because they respond to a change which we make in the independent variable. Whatever manipulation we do in the independent variable, that thing is seen in the response of the dependent variable. Outcome variable, because they are providing us with the result, they are providing us with an effect which is there. That is why they are also known as outcome variable. And unlike the independent variables which appear on the right side, hence they are also known as right side variables, these variables are known as the left side variables because on the regression equation, these appear on the left hand side, correct? Now example here, and I have brought forth certain examples for you all to practice as well, so that you all can know that yes, this is independent variable. Now I am able to, measure it. Now I am able to, identify it basically. A scientist wants to see if the brightness of light has any effect on a moth being attracted to the light. We see usually in the summers, we see that moths are attracted to the light because there are a lot, especially in the areas which are greener, right? Usually in the villages, we see that they even come closer to lamps or tube lights which are there. So here the researcher wants to see if the light brightness of any light is the one which is attracting the moth towards it. So here the brightness of the light is controlled by the scientist, right? If he will dim it, of course the chances are that the moth, most probably one or two moths will be there, or maybe none, right? But if the brightness of light is increased, right? If the brightness is increased, the moth will react, it will come towards the light. So what are we seeing here? The scientist is making changes. The scientist is manipulating variables. He is the one who is decreasing or increasing the light, the brightness of the light, and seeing if the moth is attracted or not attracted towards the light. So how the moth reacts to different light levels, distance to light source, would be the dependent variable. If it comes close to the light which is bright, right, which means that the scientist wanted to see the effect of the brightness of light, and it did have an effect on the moth coming near to the light. So what will be the hypothesis? Next question, next statement I have here. Whether changes in room temperature have an effect on math test scores. So here, what do you think is the independent variable? This is the first example that we dealt with. This is the second example, which talks about the hypothesis of whether changes in room temperature have an effect on math test scores. So of course, right now you all will be knowing that the independent variable is the temperature. If I am, maybe let's just say if I am increasing the temperature of the room, right, the students are not able to focus properly, hence they are scoring less. But if I maintain the room temperature as it should be according to the normal room temperature situation, the students will score as they know, as per their knowledge, right? So here the independent variable is the scientist or the teacher manipulating the room temperature which is there, right? And the dependent variable will be the test scores because they are dependent on the room temperature. Now you are seeing the difference. Now you are all able to identify what I was trying to tell you all, that independent always and always manipulated, dependent they are the ones on which we see the basically the effect of what we are doing, right? You measure the math skills of all participants using a standardized test and check whether they differ based on the room temperature. So there are different ways through which we can conduct tests. We can conduct a test before even conducting the research to see how much they already know, right? We can conduct a post test or a normal test during the experiment, right? Now here also you all can see this very image, right? Example of independent and dependent variable. So here is the type of treatment on level 1, 2 and 3, and we are going to see the effect of treatment on the blood pressure of the patients, right? So of course, one is on level 1, low dose of the new medication. So there is a new medication in town, which is the one which is going to be, testing the blood pressure of people. So of course, if I am giving the low dose of the medicine to the people, I see that there is no change in blood pressure because the dose is not sufficient enough, right? The example that I was giving you with Complan, that if I am not drinking it enough in a particular quantity, there will be no change, no significant change in my height, right? On level 2, high dose of the new medication, blood pressure is lowered, right? So now I gave high dose, so blood pressure is lowered. So now you see the changes that I'm making here, they are having the effect here. So these are, as I told you, these are the cause and these are the effect. Another example on level 3 would be giving them a placebo. Now what is a placebo? Placebo is like basically any treatment which is working psychologically. So if you are giving the patient a sugar pill and saying that this is your medicine for blood pressure, you can or cannot see the effect of how the person reacts to that placebo. Here, he or she, whosoever was the patient, he did not react to that placebo effect. Hence, there was no change in blood pressure which was seen. So, apply different levels of the independent variable and measure the difference in the dependent variable. Now, you see that why am I talking about in here, right? And what am I talking about in here? That here we need the cause to measure the effect as well, right? So this variable, the independent variable, will be manipulated. How to identify which is independent variable, which is a dependent variable? We'll be talking about that. The independent variable may be and dependent variable may be viewed in terms of cause and effect, right? Anything you will read in your question paper, in your UGC NET question paper, you will first try to identify, is this the cause of something or is this the output, right? So cause and effect, right? Those things should be the ones which you all should be keeping in mind while solving the question papers. If the independent variable is changed, manipulated, there is an effect which is seen on the dependent variable. Already telling you time and again that the changes will be seen not in the independent variable but in the dependent variable. Remember, the values of both the variables may change in an experiment and they are recorded. So, of course, they are, if an experiment is being conducted, you are supposed to measure these variables to see which one works the best basically. The difference is that the value of the independent variable is controlled by the experimenter. The researcher is going to decide whether he or she is going to increase or make any changes, increase, decrease, let it be on the neutral phase, right? While the value of the dependent variable only changes in response to the independent variable. Pretty clear. Recognizing independent variables is the variable. These are the questions that you all should be asking your own selves. That is the variable manipulated, controlled, used as a subject, grouping method by the researcher, right? This is for the independent variable. These questions are for you identifying or recognizing basically that is the variable that I'm talking about, is it being manipulated, is it being controlled, changed anywhere? Does this variable come before the other variable in time? Because of course, you will need the cause to be there, only then you will see the effect. So, this variable, that is the independent variable, should come before the dependent variable. Is the researcher trying to understand whether or how this variable affects another variable, because you will make changes in this one, correct? Now, how to recognize dependent variables? These questions again to ask your own selves. Is this variable measured as an outcome of the study? Is this variable the result of any kind of study, or is it dependent on another variable in the study? Because independent variable के ऊपर ही the dependent variable is measured, right? The dependent variable is the outcome which comes after the changes there. Does this variable get measured only after the other variables are altered? So we have different types of variables as well, right? We have independent variable, extraneous variables, etc. We'll be talking about other variables in some other video as well, but here if I'm talking about the dependent variable in the previous slide with this question, we needed to have the cause beforehand, correct? But here we are going to see if other variables are altered, am I seeing a change in the result? Is there any change in the result? Now, these are certain questions that I have brought forth for you to recognize or identify the types of variables which are there. Do tomatoes grow fastest under fluorescent, incandescent or natural light? So, this is my question. You all are supposed to identify the independent and dependent variable here. So, you can pause the screens on your own and try to identify and match it what I have as an answer for you all. So, the answer here is the type of light the tomato plant is grown under is the independent variable. And what were the types of light here? Fluorescent, incandescent or natural light. So, I will see if the tomatoes grow larger, or let's just say if the plant grows at a faster pace under natural light. I have seen the effect of natural light on the plant growth. Dependent variable is the growth of the plant. How is it growing? If I am growing it under natural light, how fast is it growing? If I am growing it under fluorescent light, how fast is it growing? So, I am seeing the changes in light on the growth of the plant. So, I hope you identified it right. Next is, what is the effect of intermittent fasting on blood sugar levels? Try to identify, dear students. The answer to this question is, independent variable will be presence or absence of intermittent fasting, which means that you are taking breaks, right, and you are eating. That is intermittent fasting which is there, right? So, of course, you are going to see if you are having the intermittent fasting, you are following the intermittent fasting rule, or if you are not. So, you can try to observe two groups here, the control group, right, and the treatment group. Control group now is something which will face no changes, which will just work according as they are working right now. So they will continue with their normal diet. But here, treatment variable people whosoever, like let's just say 10 people are here in treatment variable and 10 people are there in the control group. Both are different types of groups in an experiment. In the treatment group, you will put the people who want to do intermittent fasting. So people with intermittent fasting, who are doing intermittent fasting. So you can compare the results later on as well, if the presence of intermittent fasting was there and how it affected the blood sugar levels. And if it was absent, if the people were taking normal diet, how the blood sugar levels were being affected. So you see here, this is the cause and this is the effect here. Next is, to what extent does remote working, that is working from your home, working from a remote place, increase job satisfaction? What do you think? Can you identify? The answer to this question is independent variable, that is the cause we have here, is the type of work. Are you working remotely? Are you working in an office? So here also we can have two groups, control group who is working in office and treatment group who are working remotely, right? So we can compare and contrast those very things, or we can just see the effect of people working from home and how they are satisfied with their job. So work from home is the cause here because it is leading the people to be satisfied. So here job satisfaction is the effect of them working from home, correct? Now certain PYQs as always. First question that I have for you in the PYQ format is, a researcher studies the effect of peer group interaction on learning styles. The variable learning style or styles in the study functions as what? We devoted an entire video in discussing about independent dependent variables and I hope it is clear to you now. So try to answer what is the correct answer here. Try to choose the correct one here. The answer to this question is option B. It is the dependent variable. Let us just all try to identify how and why we are calling it a dependent variable. I already told you that dependent variable will be the effect, right? And independent variable will be the cause, of course, right? So the researcher studies the effect of peer group interaction. How peer group interaction, if I'm interacting with my friends, if I'm interacting with my peers, how that thing is the one which is leading to learning styles, different learning styles. So here peer group interaction will be the one which is the independent variable because it is affecting. And learning styles which are changing, which are having, a dependency on what kind of peer group I am choosing, that is the dependent variable. Learning styles. Correct? Next question, which of the following is an independent variable in the teaching learning progress? Right? Process, sorry. So what do you think is the answer here? You can pause your screens while looking at these questions and try to solve them on your own, of course, right? The answer to this question is option C, that a teacher is the independent variable because a teacher, right, she will make changes in her teaching style and the way she teaches will have an impact on the students who are learning in the classroom. If she is teaching through quizzes and she sees that students are improving. Firstly, she used to just teach through, the traditional method. So she changed her method from traditional to using quizzes in the classroom as well. And now she is able to see how the students and how their learning improved. So of course, independent variable, because teacher is teaching, and changing her learning styles, teaching styles basically, that thing is having an impact on the students who are learning. So teacher यहाँ पे will be having as independent variable, because we can make changes in the learning, teaching styles. And of course, students will be the dependent variable, because on them we are measuring the changes made in the independent variable, that is teaching style. Next is, a university teacher plans to study the effect of level of aspiration of students in terms of their socio-economic background on their scholastic performance at the term end evaluation conducted by an external testing agency. So you see, they ask you these long questions just to confuse you, but we are supposed to open our minds and focus. So what is the dependent variable here, which is the outcome here on which we are measuring the effect? The answer to this question is option C, that is scholastic performance of students. So let's just try to break the question into pieces so it's easier for all of us. A university teacher plans to study the effect of level of aspiration. So level of aspiration here is the independent variable, because a person who is the one who is aiming high, who is the one who is aspiring to reach his goals at the highest, that person will be the one who will most probably be successful at an earlier phase. So level of aspiration, and the student who is demotivated, he might perform, underperform in the classroom or any kind of test which is there. So here, the changes in the level of aspiration of different students, that is the independent variable, correct? That is the cause of level of aspiration on their scholastic performance. Effect of the level of aspiration on their scholastic performance. So here this becomes what? This becomes the dependent variable or the effect. ये जो बीच में लिखा है, this is of no use, right? Only this or this could have been of use. If they would have asked to identify the independent variable, we would have written or chosen this very thing, the level of aspiration, because it is causing, students to score and on their scholastic performance, how they are performing in the classroom. So now I hope you all are able to identify properly that what is independent variable and what is dependent variable, and what are the differentiation between the two, right? I'll be bringing forth some other video with other types of variables which are left but yet are important from the net in, perspective which we have for the examination as the exam is approaching near. I'll see you again in some other video. Thank you so much and have a good day.